It's 31 degrees and I'm going out at 5:55 a.m. to photograph a sunrise at a location where there's a barn that I have been stalking recently. So let's go along and see what I can capture this morning. I'm using the Nikon Z6II, brought the 24-120, that's it, nothing else, and a tripod, and my Pocket 3 to film this. Now, one of the things I've learned about doing early morning photography or sunrise photography is you need to get out on location at least 45 minutes before the sunrise, whatever time that's going to be. And I normally go out in the daylight hours and scout these locations out. This particular location I'm going to this morning, I have been once before, and to try to capture a sunrise, and it was a few months ago. This morning though, I am using the Nikon Z6II with the 24-120. No particular reason, it just so happens that's the camera body I grabbed this morning, okay? Let's go out here on location and see. I'm starting to see some development in the sky just driving to it. It's only about 10 minutes from my house, it's not very far. And normally what I do is I wake up early in the morning to make my coffee and get on the tube, and I look out my bedroom window to see if there's any atmosphere. And when I looked out this morning, there was a heavy frost. We had a heavy frost last night, so there was some whiteness on the roofs and on the decking, and I thought for a minute there we'd had some snow. We hadn't had any snow that I can tell driving up here, but when we do have some snow, I will be out here at this location photographing these barns again. Now, this location for me is a twofer, and what I mean by that is there's two barns. They face different directions. One would be, you would be facing the south if you were looking at the barn, and the other would be facing the north. I'm shooting the north barn this morning. I will show you those two barns when I get out here, but what I mean by twofer is I can do a sunrise and a sunset at the same location, which to me is a 2-for-1 bonus. So let me show you what I'm talking about with the two barns, okay? There's one barn behind me right over here where I'm parked. That one faces to the south, and that would be a good sunset location there. And it's an older rustic barn. It's got some red paint faded and a, and a roof that's kind of dilapidated. But then on the other side, the one I'm photographing this morning for the sunrise is this barn here. And this one here more or less faces to the north. I've got a composition set up here with the Z6II and the 24-120. I'm at about 35 millimeters on the lens, and there's a tree right there to the right hand side, so I've positioned myself closer to the street so I could include that tree in my composition. There are some power lines behind the building, but I don't think you'll see those really that much in the photograph. And we are about 30 minutes before sunrise, and as you can see, the sky is starting to materialize a little bit. Now, my settings that I'm using, I'm bracketing these shots, okay? And the settings I'm using is f8 ISO 100, and the shutter speed is variable. The base exposure right now is about 2 seconds, maybe about 1.6. As the sun comes up, that's going to change. I have manually dialed in my Kelvin on the camera. I have an app on my phone. I'll show that to you in the video if you want to get the app. It's called Light Meter. All you do, and I'll show you real quick how I do it. I just pull out my phone and pull up the app. Let me get my fingers peeled back on my gloves. Having good gloves in the wintertime to keep your hands warm is important. Mine are not good, but they're good enough. So like when I pull up this app and point my phone at the scene, it tells me my Kelvin is about 7,400. So I had it dialed in at 8,000 earlier during the blue hour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and manually change that in the camera, okay? And I've been experimenting with this Kelvin versus cloudy versus sunset. And I'm going to dial this Kelvin back to 7,200. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to get the white balance as close as possible in camera, okay? So we're just standing here now waiting for the sunrise to happen. This is the scene that I'm looking at right now, the one I'm focused on with my composition. We're starting to get a little color in the sky, so I'm going to get ready to start taking some photographs. So we are about 10 minutes before the sun comes up over the horizon, and you can see the colors behind the barn in the sky, especially over here behind this tree. I'm starting to get that cotton candy look that I'm looking for. I'm going to change the Kelvin setting on my camera, and I'm just going to go to an auto setting. I'm constantly adjusting my exposure on the camera. I try to keep my exposure meter about 2/3 of a stop underexposed when I'm doing the bracketing. This particular bracketing series is 2 stops over, 2 stops under, just because you're capturing, you know, on the Z6II, and it has a lot of really good dynamic range to recover from. What I'm hoping for in just a moment, when the sun actually gets up above the horizon in about 7 minutes, is this side of the barn right here. Okay, let me sit right there. That side of the barn gets bathed in some warm sunlight. Okay, that would be perfect. And then the area under that roof would be kind of like a golden color. So I'm just kind of hanging out here for at least another 15 or 20 minutes. You know, one of the tips I want to give you on doing photography like this, besides the other tips I gave you earlier in the video, is do not leave too early, okay? Now, what I mean is, once the sun comes up and you've determined the sun has risen, you need to stay on location for at least another 10 or 15 minutes, because you just don't know what's going to happen, okay? I have packed up before when the sun had come up. I thought it was all over with, and I was walking back to my vehicle and something fantastic happened in the sky. Excuse me. So don't leave too early, okay? Same thing goes for a sunset. Once the sun sets below the horizon, stick around for another 15, 20 minutes and see what's going to happen. Sometimes that's when you capture the magic in these landscape photography. So right now we're just enjoying this. Actually, it's a beautiful morning. It's not too cold. It's only about 31 degrees, I think, 32. We did not get snow like I thought. And the frost is here, but it's not a really heavy frost. But there is some frost on the roof, and it's a little bit breezy. So we're just kind of hanging out here waiting for the sun to come up in about 5 more minutes. Now, I want to talk about camera settings just for a second. On the older Nikon bodies, especially the Z6II, I like to shoot my bracketing series with an automatic process. And what I mean by that is I changed my shutter release from single, okay, to a timer. And I'll set it for like a 2-second timer, but under that timer setting you can change that to take like 3 photographs. So if you set up your auto bracketing for 3 shots, then you can push the shutter button 1 time where this setting is enabled, and take all 3 photographs. The camera will do it automatically without pushing the shutter button 3 times. But on these older bodies, the shutter release does not get saved if you turn the camera off, even if you save it in the user settings. If you turn the camera off, or the camera goes to sleep while you're out here shooting, and you go to wake it back up by half pressing the shutter button, that timer function reverts back to single. Now, according to Nikon, the reason why they do that is so you don't mess up and leave it on that. Well, my opinion, they should give us a menu option to change that, okay? Because if I'm going to put it on a timer function and I wanted to take the 3 shots, because doing landscape photography, I do a lot of bracketing, then I want it to stay there. Whether I turn the camera off, you know, if I save it in the user setting, I want it to stay there. And if the camera goes to sleep, I want it to stay there. But on these older bodies, it does not, okay? And you can try that at home for yourself if you're a Nikon user. Now on the Z8, on my Z8, it will keep it. So they did make a change. I don't know if it has something to do with menu banks versus user banks, okay? Because there is a difference between user banks and menu banks, depending on which brand of Nikon, which model of Nikon camera you have. So that's a very annoying thing for me, and I wish they would change that in a firmware update or give us a menu option. I've looked, there's no way to save that, and I think it's well reported on the internet about that feature, okay? So we are right on the verge of sunrise, and the sky over to this way, if you could see it, I'm going to turn you just a little bit so you can see it. The sky over that way looks really good, okay? It's a shame that that barn is not sitting in a different location. And I've got a lot of clouds on the horizon, and I'm just going to continue shooting. My current exposure setting is 1/10 of a second, and that of course is bracketed, so that would be, the first shot would be 1/10, 1/40, and then 1/2.5. Yeah, I wish the clouds were a little bit up behind, you know, up in the sky instead of just a blue sky up there. But we get served with what we get, you know. It's now sunrise, so it's now 6:38. So I'm just waiting to see if the sun comes up. We're in a mountainous area here, you know, so it takes a while for the sun to appear above the horizon in some locations because of the mountains. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens here in the next 10 minutes. My fingers are starting to get cold now, okay, even with my gloves on. Like I said, these are not the thickest gloves in the world, but they do, okay? They make do for what I'm out here doing. So let me show you one more time what I was talking about this situation now that it's lighter out. This would be a sunrise barn location, and then if I go across the street over here, okay, there's another barn. And I noticed since I was here last time, there was a bunch of trees growing along this fence, and they've cut them all, which is really cool because now I can stand back at this location and get some of the fence, some of the atmosphere of this fence on a sunset. In fact, this right now at sunrise doesn't look too bad behind me, okay? So I may want to bring the camera over here and take a few shots of this real quick during a sunrise. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I've moved my camera and my tripod, okay, over to this location. There's a tree branch sticking up right here. Actually, there's a tree branch that's kind of sticking up in the frame right there. I'm just going to move that out of the way real quick where they had cut those trees. It was kind of sticking up in my frame. And yeah, 1/125, 1/25, 1/100, 1/6 is my bracketing. And that looks pretty good right there. In fact, the sky looks really good in this direction compared to that direction. So maybe this would be a dual location here, a sunrise, depending on what's behind the barn. If there was clouds behind it, we're getting a little cotton candy going on right now. And it could be a sunset location, you know. So this, this could end up being a very productive area for me to photograph this winter. Now, as you know, I did have a location near my home also where there was a barn that I had found, and I had photographed it over the years, okay? And I actually done a whole landscape tutorial video at that location, and I put a link to that video in the description. Well, actually I could put it right up here in the top of the video right here if you want to go see it after this video. Anyways, that barn location was a favorite place of mine, and I shot photographs. I made photographs there over the years, a lot of them. Let me show you a few photographs of that barn now that I've taken over the years. Now, a lot of you that are familiar with the channel probably are familiar with that barn because it's been a favorite of mine. I used to sell at art shows. It has been a big seller at the art shows. But last year, after January in 2025, they made some modifications to the barn. They replaced the roof, put a whole brand new metal roof on it, okay? They dug out the front of it. There was grass in the front of it. They dug it out and put in a bunch of gravel, and now they're storing equipment inside the barn, and it's basically ruined, okay? So I don't go there anymore because it's not a good location anymore for me. So I'm always on the search for other things, and this I found over the summer, this location here, and I've been studying it for a while on photo pills and what have you. So yeah, anyway, let's take a few more pictures before we leave and go to the house. Now, one way I could solve my dilemma I was talking about earlier in the video, and I was just thinking about this, is I could put my remote shutter on the camera and just push the button 3 times, okay? I'm constantly getting my glove and pulling my finger back to change that option in the eye menu that I've got it set up in. So I'm talking about the timer function, okay? Having to reset that every time the camera goes to sleep or turns off. So yeah, I could put a remote shutter release on there and do my bracketing that way. In fact, a long time ago, that's basically, I think, how I did it when I was using my D7500 to do landscape photography. Anyways, that's gonna about do it. I'm looking here at the sky. We're about 10 minutes past sunrise, and I haven't seen the sun yet appear on the landscape. So I'm gonna swing back around to the other side and finish that barn up over there. The sun is starting to come up over the horizon. I can see behind me down the road here that it's starting to bathe the grass, and that electric pole right there is starting to get a little light on it. So I'm just hanging out here. It is probably it's about 10 minutes past the sunrise, and I can see the sun coming up. Let me show you real quick. It's coming up over that building over there. It's getting brighter. So I'm just waiting for it to start bathing this barn in some warm morning sunlight. Yeah, this is going to be really good, okay? It's coming up really fast. Looks like they got some winter wheat or something sowed out in this field, so you can see the light on the grass and the houses too. So it'll just be a few more minutes and it should be hitting this barn. Yeah, this is going to be great. Like I said, stick around, don't leave too early. Well, that's going to be a wrap, okay, for this shooting session this morning at this barn, okay. I should give it a name. I should give this location a name, but I'm afraid to do that. But anyways, hope you enjoyed that video, and you've got some good tips out of that so you could pursue some good barn landscape photography yourself. My name is Ron Durant. I am a photographer. I do live in East Tennessee. You all have a nice day now. We'll see you. Bye-bye. Now, those photographs, I captured the barn using the Nikon Z8 in the 24-120. But this morning, I just happened to grab the Nikon Z2. Now, I'm sure a few of you that are familiar with me have seen those videos before. I mean, those photographs.